What are the best and worst matchups for your wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses in Week 10? And what do we think about the tough decisions on the start-sit line? It's time to break it all down here for you for fantasy football decisions as we begin another Matchup Thursday on Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. Come to site, check out all the good stuff we have. We got sleepers and busts. We got our rankings across positions. We have my signature column, the decider, the start sits, combined with rankings, and that's what we break down here in the middle of the week. So we got to quarterback and running back there on Wednesday's show, Matchup Wednesday. Now we're going to Matchup Thursday, where we're looking at wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses to help you make the decision. Looking at the top players, the no-brainer starts, and then look at some of those tough calls, why we like or don't like certain players this week. So we'll get into all that here on today's show. Before we do that, thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to you on all platforms. This is also a crossover Thursday across the Locked On network. That means the hosts of different shows of the competing teams this week will get together and break it down for you. Crossover Thursday is presented by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is so much fun, and it's easy to play. No competing with other players, just you versus the projections available. Pick 2 to 5 players, and they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. You can literally take less than 60 seconds to enter. It's that easy. We love Prize Picks, and you know that you will too. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. All right, it's time to dive in. We've got a lot to talk about here. Wide receiver rankings. We'll get to the wide receiver rankings. The guys I like, they're no-brainer starts, and why I have them this way, and also digging a little bit deeper to maybe give you the full starting potential here for week number 10. Let's start at the top. Tyreek Hill on pace to have 2,000 receiving yards. The Browns secondary banged up still with Denzel Ward. Greg Newsome, fire up Tyreek Hill. He's number one on the board right now. Cooper Kupp, we'll have to watch the Matthew Stafford concussion. That was some news after we produced yesterday's show that he's in the concussion protocol, but you figure John Wolford will still feed Cooper Kupp. The Cardinals do not play well in the slot here in coverage, and their secondary is banged up with Byron Murphy, Budda Baker, and Marco Wilson's not very good. So Cooper Kupp comes in number 2. Stephon Diggs is number 3 this week. Revenge game against the Vikings. You know he'll be fired up. There's a quarterback issue there. Case Keenum, the former Viking, is on standby here with that Josh Allen elbow injury that we're a little concerned about. But Diggs is going to be the number 1 target anyway. Could see a little bit of Patrick Peterson in that game, but Diggs is way faster. He's better. Diggs is going to be highly motivated for the big game. While on the other side, Justin Jefferson exists. So the Bills secondary is tough, but he's Justin Jefferson. So he comes in at number 4 there. He's going to be also looking forward to play well with Diggs on the other side. I do like DeAndre Hopkins this week. It doesn't matter that Jalen Ramsey's on the other side. He's getting targeted high volume from Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, by the way, also popped up with a bit of an issue, hamstring. So we'll watch that for sure there in Arizona if they're going to have to pivot away from Kyler. But DeAndre Hopkins, again, if they go to backup quarterback, it should be even a bigger target there, just like Kupp for the Rams. Now, A.J. Brown, red hot, gets that Commanders secondary really bad, maybe a matchup with Kendall Fuller. So love him at number 6. Jalen Waddle attached to Tyreek Hill pretty much every week. He's in the top 10 against the Browns. The Raiders have a tough matchup against the Colts, but I'm not going to drop Devontae Adams after his 2-touchdown performance there against the Jaguars. The Colts are a tougher secondary, but I think the Raiders are going to win this game. They played well at home this season, and that's where their bread is buttered more. They blew a lead to the Cardinals in the first game, 20-pointer, but they took care of the Broncos and Texans rather easily there. So I do like Devontae Adams there at home in the top 10. Christian Kirk makes the top 10 as well. He just feels it for the Jaguars. The Chiefs are a little bit vulnerable on the slot sides here. So Christian Kirk, I like high volume, probably with Trevor Lawrence throwing a lot in the second half. You got CeeDee Lamb coming back off the bye. The Packers will have Jerry Alexander there, maybe shadowing him. But Eric Stokes, their fine young corner, could be missing this game. So he didn't practice there early. So Lamb, they can scheme him open there in that one. So he rounds out the top 10. Deebo Samuel, good news, practicing in full there with the hamstring on Wednesday. So he's going to return here. The Chargers don't have J.C. Jackson. Their secondary is not playing all that well. He's going to play off Christian McCaffrey well. So he's number 11. Mike Evans battling through an injury. The Seahawks, tough matchup against the big, tall, outside rookie corner, Tariq Woolen. But Evans is always a good bet for a touchdown. You got to keep him in your lineup. There, Chris Godwin does have a little bit easier matchup. The Seahawks can give out numbers to the slot. So Evans a little bit more touchdown dependent. Godwin needs the volume inside, but I do like that matchup against the Seahawks away from Woolen for Godwin. Now, speaking of the Seahawks, I also like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. They're playing better than Evans and Godwin this point. And they have Goodwin also on their team. So they're also playing better than Marquise Goodwin. But Goodwin should be in the mix there behind Metcalf and Lockett against the Buccaneers this week. Carlton Davis is struggling. That's not good against Metcalf. And in the slot, the Bucs can struggle as well. So that helps Tyler Lockett in this matchup. So I expect that duo to be a little bit more productive in the end than Evans and Godwin. Allen Lazard, he's the best standing receiver at this point. Romeo Doubs is definitely out for Green Bay. You have Sammy Watkins likely to miss the game. So it's probably going to be Lazard. Christian Watson looks like he'll be okay from the concussion protocol, but Lazard has come through in almost every game that he's played in this season. Amari Cooper returns. He could see some of Xavier Howard in this game, but volume is going to be it there. I think the Browns are going to probably trail the Dolphins. Brandon Ayuk is on fire. He's been on fire the whole season. Chargers, again, secondary beat up. So I actually like the collective 49ers here to put a big beating on the Chargers and score a lot of points. Now, Terry McLaurin, look, I'm a little bit torn on wanting to force him in there against Darius Slay. The history in this matchup isn't great here. Slay can really handle McLaurin. He'll probably travel with him. So don't love it at all. The Commanders, again, if you got a little bit better alternative with some upside, I might go in that direction, especially any of those guys I mentioned before, Terry McLaurin. But he's in there because he's probably your best option with Taylor Heineke at this point. Now, DJ Moore, Falcons secondary on Thursday night without A.J. Terrell again. DJ Moore did have that long touchdown in the first matchup. He should get the ball quite a bit from P.J. Walker this one, and he can also use that rainy turf to make a guy miss and make a big play there on Thursday night. Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're going to just hope the best for him here against the Bears. They are down maybe Kindle Vildor in the middle there, and they're not good with Kyler Gordon either, so that should help Amon-Ra St. Brown. Let's hope he comes through as a volume-based play here for Jared Goff. Chris Olave stays in your lineup against the beatable Steelers cornerback core. And then Devonta Smith, we're going to keep rolling him out because, again, you don't want to miss on the big game. He's kind of like Gabe Davis, where it's going to come and you don't want to miss out on that big game. You just have to live with the fact that he's a bit boom or bust. Now, let's quickly go into the guys that I also like as starters this week. Looking at Juju Smith-Schuster, he's the top receiver for the Chiefs. He's the most trusted receiver. You have Mecole Hardman battling an abdomen issue. So Juju against the Jaguars can dominate there. They're more vulnerable against slot receivers. Gabe Davis, speaking of Davis, boomer bust, the Vikings secondary. He could get Cameron Dantzler, who's a little bit banged up right now. That'd be a big help to him producing, regardless of who's the quarterback. Joshua Palmer, the 49ers secondary is weak. I know Justin Herbert struggled a little bit last week, but Palmer still came up with the yardage numbers. That's going to happen again in garbage time against the 49ers. Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, I'm going to circle them. Broncos, we've been down on all season, but Judy's starting to feel it of late. I think having Greg Dulcich as the third target, we'll get into him, why I like him this week. Courtland Sutton has not done much, but you think they're going to try to get him going in this one as well. So I expect the Titans to have a lot of success running the ball. They could have a positive game script there, so that's going to help the Broncos as well, maybe throw on the road. And you can't run on Tennessee, so that says they're going to have to open it up and give these guys volume this week, regardless of game script. Darnell Mooney, I love to keep it going against the Lions. He owned that matchup last year. He's coming off his first touchdown. He's looking good. George Pickens, man, I love this. With Marshawn Lattimore still having the abdomen issue, there's no Chase Claypool. I think they're going to make sure Kenny Pickett gets the ball to George Pickens more this week, so love that. Rondell Moore, again, the Rams are not great in the slot. Moore is a little bit banged up. He's on the injury report. But again, they really are not good covering inside away from Jalen Ramsey, so I like him. Terrace Marshall Jr., I think you look at the last 2 weeks, he's been very playable as a wide receiver 3. Good matchup. He produced 4 catches, 87 yards in the first meeting there against the Falcons, so like him as well, playing off DJ Moore. Michael Gallup has a chance for shot play there. We said CeeDee Lamb could see some Jair Alexander. Gallup has a good chance to face the side with that Eric Stokes and put up some numbers there. Wan'Dale Robinson, the cover 2 of the Texans, screams Wan'Dale Robinson will get the ball a lot here on underneath routes coming after the bye. Now, Allen Robinson, he's been like every few weeks, but the Cardinals secondary is that bad with Marco Wilson. There's the number 2 corner if they have attention on Cooper Kupp. So I feel a little bit better if Stafford's in there, but that's how I look at it there for Allen Robinson this week. So there you have it. There's a look at your wide receiver recommended starts and your rankings for the week here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll get into the wide receiver sits in our next segment. Before we do that, I got to tell you, that was a big year for me. I had a 10-year wedding anniversary, and I needed a jewelry person I could trust here, and Blue Nile was the one for me, and they made it extra special. Whether you're looking to pop the question or have a milestone to celebrate this year, or want to just let your love sparkle with a little bit of a surprise, Blue Nile can help you make your celebrations even more memorable. As the original online jeweler, Blue Nile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. Blue Nile has helped millions of couples create the perfect engagement ring. Their easy online tools let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then help you handcraft her perfect one-of-a-kind engagement ring. Looking for a piece of fine jewelry to commemorate a special milestone, but still having trouble choosing? Blue Nile's jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Shop stress-free with Blue Nile's 100% satisfaction guarantee. All Blue Nile orders are insured and shipped free in discreet packaging. They also overnight ship if you're in a rush. Really great. You're going to get it on time, the way you want it, just the way she would like it. Make your moment sparkle with Blue Nile. Go to BlueNile.com and use the code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's Blue Nile, BlueNile.com. Code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com. Locked On is the code. All right, we will continue here on Locked On Fantasy Football, breaking down what we don't like at wide receiver this week in a moment. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's go through the wide receivers that I'm not so fond of this week. We talked a little bit about Terry McLaurin, not liking that matchup. I also don't like his counterpart, Curtis Samuel. Or looking at that matchup, the Eagles are pretty good at the other corners as well with James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox. So that's not very good at all for Samuel. So I just think this Commanders offense is going to struggle in general in Philadelphia. The Eagles just kill it at home defensively, and we know that for sure. Pittman and Pierce, this has been the attorney at law firm kind of just like slam shut here. The case has been closed with Sam Ehlinger. It's really hard. I mean, it's the Raiders, too. This would have been a great matchup if you had a competent quarterback. Even Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, give us something here. But I figure it's going to be run-heavy approach. We'll see who's in there. Jonathan Taylor still banged up in the ankle. Deion Jackson is on the injury report. I still think the Colts will probably be run-heavy here. They also have their 2 tight ends, 2 out of 3, I should say. Mo Ali Cox is hurting as well as Jelani Woods. They both may not miss or play in this game. So this would be a great opportunity to get the ball to the wide receivers if you're Sam Ehlinger, but he also did play with Colin Granson in high school, so that may not help these guys either. So it's just tough here for the Colts. It's been terrible. We had such high hopes. These guys were looking good. Remember that Broncos game when both those guys were going off? That seems like so long ago at this point. And again, Ellinger and a new coaching staff. I don't know what you're going to get from the new play caller, Parks Frazier, under new surprise coach, Jeff Saturday. Deontay Johnson, not failing him. I really like George Pickens, but looking at Pickens, either he gets the replacement for Lattimore or Paulson Adebo. I just don't like the way they're scheming Johnson open. He just doesn't seem to have the chemistry with Pickett. So I would feel a lot better with Pickens than Johnson this week. Brandon Cooks, who knows what's going on with Brandon Cooks? I mean, the wrist injury is why he's officially not practicing, but he's not happy with the situation. He could very much Deshaun Watson himself out of this situation in a different way. Completely different situation, but one of those things where the guy doesn't practice and just pouts and is not out there, and that was before the Watson thing. So these Texans, the culture there is a little bit questionable. So Cooks, again, maybe pouting about no Jack Easterby, but we're not going to count on Cooks. He just didn't show up last week when they needed him against the Eagles. I'm not going to trust him this week against the Giants. Adam Thielen, tough matchup for him. Really not that easy for Jefferson either in this game, but I just don't like forcing Adam Thielen in the lineup. Drake London is giving you nothing. He could see J.C. Horn quite a bit against the Panthers in the rainy conditions. Zay Jones, revenge game against the Raiders, didn't see a lot. It's more been Marvin Jones and Christian Kirk of late, so I'm not going to go there. DeAndre Carter, the idea is not bad because he's kind of in the Keenan Allen slot role, but you can't play him. There's just not enough volume there for DeAndre Carter. As Justin Herbert has really been about Joshua Palmer when his top two wide receivers have been out. All right, now let's turn our attention to the tight end rankings here. There's not a lot of no-brainers at this position, but actually more than expected. It depends on a couple of injury returns. Travis Kelce, of course, love him against the Jaguars at home. Dallas Goedert coming off a big game last week. They're 100 yards and a touchdown against the Texans. He gets the Commanders, who are decent against the tight end, but Goddard's so involved. I think this still could be a little bit more of a Brown-Smith game, but we'll see how that plays out. George Kittle, the Chargers are weak against the run. They're not that great against tight ends here. So let's look at Kittle, again, playing off of Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk. All these guys are going to help each other produce, and this is the situation. TJ Hawkinson looking great here. He was involved heavily, so I do like him a little bit more. I know the Bills are tough on tight ends, but Matt Milano's a little bit banged up. Tremaine Edmonds a little bit banged up. Jordan Poyer is hurting, so that's going to help some things open up for Hawkinson there. So I'd like Hawkinson a lot more, and it kind of hurts Thielen's value as well when the secondary matchup is tough. Zach Ertz is a tough one. Ernest Jones, the Rams, they've been pretty good at covering tight ends, but Ertz has got it done through touchdowns with DeAndre Hopkins target hogging since he returned. David Njoku said he's going to play, but I didn't see the practice there. No practice there for him with the ankle injury. So Dolphins, keep in mind, that's where he played in college, so he'll be eager to play in that game and could get some volume. I do like him in that matchup should he go. As we saw, Cole Kmet score 2 touchdowns against the Dolphins last week. Darren Waller, who knows with him? You can look at Foster Moreau there also against the Colts if Waller does not go. Now, we mentioned the Titans have been pretty good against the tight end, but not this year. Their back end is not as formidable. They've missed Amani Hooker at safety as well. So Greg Dulcich, he's had 2 very nice games since being activated here. The rookie from UCLA, wide receiver hybrid, pretty much their third target. I like him. Kyle Pitts, look, it's been disappointing, but he had a nice game against the Panthers last week or 2 weeks ago. Last week, he just missed a touchdown pass from Marcus Mariota that would have completely changed his day. So I like him still this week. Cole Kmet, 2 touchdowns last week, 1 touchdown the week before. He's feeling it. The Lions give a lot to the tight end. We know that. They actually could have given up more to the Packers last week. We had the mashup of Robert Tonyan, Josiah DeGara, and Mercedes Lewis. Who put their numbers together, was pretty darn good against the Lions last week. K-Dot and the Seahawks do give up numbers to the tight ends, especially the touchdowns. K-Dot did score last week, and Zach Ertz did score in the Seahawks. So I like K-Dot and Munich, even with Cameron Brate back in the mix. Tyler Higbee, I think, rebounds. The Cardinals are so bad against the tight end. Cardinals, Seahawks. Take your pick. What team is worse at covering the tight end? Part of it is that they're good at covering on the outside a little bit, so that opens things up. So especially if it's John Wolford in there, Higbee is going to get targeted quite a bit this week. Evan Ingram, we'll see about him in the back injury. It looked like he could play this week with limited. You could pivot to Dan Arnold if you're desperate, but I do like the tight end this week against the Chiefs. Noah Fant looks like maybe separated a little bit from Will Dissly here. Will Dissly a little bit banged up. Actually, Fant is also working through an injury, but they're both practicing here. So I do like Fant a little bit more than Dissly. Dissly is a little bit more tight end, touchdown dependent, where Fant, I think you can play independent of that this week. So Cole Kmet, again, is the guy that we're circling a lot. Love that he's coming on. He's kind of living up to the expectations early in the season. His scoring, he's being used as red zone threat. So sometimes you have to be patient for new offenses to click, and that's what we're seeing here in 2022 with the Chicago Bears. All right, we will get into the tight ends that I do not recommend, the guys that I didn't mention there, and we'll do that. And then we'll look at my defense and special teams rankings as well as the start sits there. And I always like to dig deeper to find some plays that you may not have thought about this week that are going to help you at that position. So we'll do that in our final segment here. As you know, one of our favorite partners here at Locked On Fantasy Football is BetOnline. That's because BetOnline.net is your number one source for sporting betting information, stats, news, analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. It's not just the NFL and college football, but it's also basketball. NBA's in full swing. College basketball is coming. We have soccer, World Cup coming up also as well. Esports, they've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those as well. You're listening to one right now. So BetOnline has got those for you to break down betting there. And we're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. That's BetOnline. Head to the website today or use a mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, it is time to close the show on Locked On Fantasy Football. We're going to look at the tight ends that I'm going to put on the bench this week. Gerald Everett came up very small against the Falcons last week. The 49ers, decent against the tight end here. They got good active linebackers. Dre Greenlaw should return, so that's going to help. So I'm not going Gerald Everett at all. Again, it was a very Joshua Palmer and Austin Eckler focused game plan. I don't think that's going to change much this week. Pat Freiermuth, look, the Saints are just very tough on tight ends. We've seen it over and over again. They shut down Zach Ertz. Last week, it was a touchdown for Isaiah Likely, but that was his only catch on 5 targets. They're really good for some reason at controlling the tight end. This is even without Marcus Williams anymore. So part of it is Tyrann Mathieu is a very active safety, but I'm not feeling Pat Freiermuth. They said they want to get him a few more targets without Claypool, but I do not like the matchup this week. Dalton Schultz, I hate the matchup for him. I know the Lions went a little bit nuts with their tight end touchdowns last week, including James Mitchell, but Schultz, I think, is going to be phased a little bit out of the offense. They didn't have a healthy Gallup for a lot last year. That's why Schultz was a big deal, but I think the Cowboys are going to open up that downfield passing game a little bit more. Dak Prescott feeling fully healthy after the bye. Taysom Hill not feeling it against the Steelers, not getting enough touches or work that he can trust in the running game. Mike Gesicki, touchdown dependent. It's not going to happen against the Browns. Robert Tonyan, I don't like the split between DeGara and Lewis now all of a sudden, so I'm not going with him at all this week. So those are the weak guys that I don't want to force into my lineup at tight end here in week number 10. Now let's look at our defenses. I mentioned how I think the Commanders could really do nothing. So I have the Eagles number 1 on my defensive list this week. Cowboys attacking Aaron Rodgers. Never thought I would say that, but yeah, the Cowboys and Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs, I should say. I actually like the Diggs brothers to go off this week. So I wouldn't be surprised if Stephon and Trayvon make big touchdown plays this week. Would not be surprised at all. The Cowboys at number 2. Let's make it a trifecta in the NFC East. The Giants at home against Davis Mills and the Texans. Yeah, fired up. Bills, the Vikings are pretty stingy in giving up fantasy points. The Bills are a bit beat up here, but they can get some Kirk Cousins turnover action there. So I have them at number 4. 49ers at home against Justin Herbert. Again, weird to say that, but again, the Chargers offense limited. The Chargers also can give up sacks here. Trey Pipkins, their right tackle's hurt. And we know Rashawn Slater's already down for the year, so Nick Bosa can get some damage done there. You look at the Broncos. They're playing at Tennessee, and I like the Titans against the Broncos as well. So I think it's going to be a grindy game a little bit. From the Titans side of things, I think they'll get some mistakes and sacks and takeaways from Wilson. from the Broncos side, I think you'll have the same from Ryan Tannehill or Malik Willis. I do like the Raiders this week and Sam Ehlinger. Sam Ehlinger has been hemorrhaging points to bad defenses. We saw that in the last 2 weeks. There we saw that against the Commanders. So the Patriots were a good defense. This team, the Raiders, can be good with Max Crosby, so they'll create some disruption here. I do like them at home. Rams against the Cardinals. I mean, Kyler Murray, a little bit banged up with a hamstring. He's day-to-day now. Also, the Seahawks had a nice game against the Cardinals last week, so you can feel that. The Cardinals, if they get John Wolford, you can feel good about that as well. The Seahawks get Tom Brady, the GOAT, but the Seahawks defense is playing really well. Look at the last 4 weeks. It's been very productive, very good defense overall, making plays here for Pete Carroll. Steelers, yeah, I do like the Steelers quite a bit in that game against the Saints, against Andy Dalton. They know how to defend him. Mike Tomlin can feel it. The Saints also against Kenny Pickett on the other side. So some defensive options in the same game. And I do also like the Panthers as a bonus one here in the rain. Brian Burns and company, J.C. Horn. I think they'll force some big plays out of Marcus Mariota and that Falcons offense this week. All right, let's look at the defenses I don't want to play. Chiefs, it's a bit of a trap. They didn't really come through against the Titans. Malik Willis last week because they got run over by Derrick Henry. Travis Etienne can cause some more problems. So Chiefs, I think, are going to give up points, not making up big plays without Frank Clark. So not playing the Chiefs, not playing the Buccaneers. The Seahawks offense is too clean. I know they had a pick six from Geno Smith last week, a little bit of an anomaly there, but it's going to be a rough go for the Buccaneers in that matchup. Dolphins, I think they're going to give up too much rushing to Nick Chubb to feel effective to tee off. The Bears, I think, also are going to give up too much rushing as well against the Lions to be productive. The Colts, not feeling them on the road against the Raiders, and I'm also not feeling the Falcons on the road against the Panthers here. Again, P.J. Walker, you might be chasing those points from the previous matchup, but again, road defense is a little bit harder to play unless they're playing a very weak offense. I know the Falcons seem like they're facing a weak offense, but the Panthers can run on them pretty well and move the ball through the air with their weaknesses in the secondary at this point. So, again, you need to find where the source of playmakers are, know your scoring system. So I'm always looking at, are the sacks and takeaways in the offing? A lot of that, you need a little bit of passing volume to do that, and that's how I look at streaming defenses here in week number 10. All right, thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, just like Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks again for listening to this edition of Locked On Fantasy Football. It's a matchup Thursday. We broke down the wide receiver, tight end, and defense special teams rankings. If you needed to catch up on quarterback and running back with the updates of Stafford and Murray and Allen all being day-to-day here, check it out there on Matchup Wednesday. Tomorrow, we'll close the show Friday, as we usually do, with our injury report, detailed information, the latest on that, our DFS updates here for FanDuel cash games, DraftKings tournaments, as well as our prize picks of the week. So we'll get into all that tomorrow there for you, as well as some reaction to what we saw on the field between the Falcons and Panthers in Charlotte on Thursday Night Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, again, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day. Good luck in seeing what we get here, and we'll catch you later.